Hi, everybody, and welcome to Shadows and Secrets Deep Dive series. My name is Samantha Skal.
And I am Kerry Savage. And together we're Shadows and Secrets, a writing retreat for mystery and thriller authors.
Find out more at shadowsandsecretsretreats.com.
We are both book coaches and authors, and we love talking about story. This is our series of major, spoiler alert, people, deep dives into scary books we love, where we talk about twists, structure, masterful misdirection, villains, and anything else that strikes our fancy about MTS, which is the overarching genre term for mystery, thriller, and suspense. But first, I'd like to introduce my co-founder of Shadows and Secrets, Sam. Sam, tell the people a little more about what you do as a book coach.
Thank you so much, Kerry. So I love working with thriller, mystery, and suspense authors to plan and write twisty novels, and I especially dig brainstorming twists and villains. That is my superpower. Kerry, can you tell the people who you are and what you focus on?
Thank you, Sam. Yes, I am also a writer and book coach, and I love working with writers to make their fictional ideas come to life. I am super into immersive settings and details that really pull you into a book's world.
Excellent. So remember, we are going to be giving away everything, including all the key plot points here. So if you've not read today's book, which we will announce in just 1 second, hit pause, go read it, and then come back. Like for real, we are going to unpack everything.
Seriously, there will be no secrets unturned, so consider this your final spoiler alert warning. The structure of these talks is going to be the same every time. We're going to read the book jacket copy and what the author has done to manipulate us before we even start.
And then we're going to read the first page and what the author has done to manipulate us there.
And then we're going to break down each of the major twists in terms of how the author did it, what percentage of the way through it happened, and what on-screen clues existed so that the twist worked.
Yes. And we're also going to talk through how the author accomplished overall misdirection and manipulation of the reader from a big picture perspective, and the way the author used language or setting or other elements to set the reader up for maximum fear.
Which is exactly why we read scary shit. We like to be scared by fiction.
We sure do. All right. Are you ready?
I sure am.
All right. I'm pulling up my cover because
Today's book.
Are we ready? Yeah.
Okay. Today's author is by Tudor. It's called The Drift. That's what we're focusing on today. Um, I am going to read the book jacket copy.
You sure are. And also, I will just say up front, this book, like 10 stars, like just adored. CJ Tudor, bless you for bringing this into the world. It's one of my favorite books that I've ever read. I loved how you manipulated me. So, okay.
The manipulation was top notch.
Yeah, it's really good.
All right. Log line first. Which I do appreciate that we get the log lines right up front too, because it's one of my weaknesses. So it's great to study these. All right. 3 ordinary people risk everything for a chance at redemption in this audacious, utterly gripping novel of catastrophe and survival at the end of the world from the acclaimed author of The Chalk Man. I have not read The Chalk Man. Have you read The Chalk Man?
I haven't either. And also, I will plug that CJ Tudor was up for Best Hardcover Novel in the 2024 Thriller Awards this year, which is an amazing honor. And all the nominees were incredible. So it was, but well done.
Yes, can't go wrong. All right. So I will now get into the copy. Hannah awakens to carnage, all mangled metal and shattered glass. After she was evacuated from a secluded boarding school during a snowstorm, her coach careered off the road, trapping her with a handful of survivors. They'll need to work together to escape, with their sanity and secrets intact. Meg awakes to a gentle rocking. She's in a cable car stranded high above snowy mountains with 5 strangers and no memory of how they got on board. They're headed to a place known only as the retreat, but as the temperature drops and tensions mount, Meg realizes that they may not all make it there alive. Carter is gazing out the window of an isolated ski chalet he and his companions call home. As their generator begins to waver in the storm, something hiding in the chalet's depths threatens to escape, and their fragile bonds will be tested when the power finally fails for good.
Good.
Imminent dangers faced by Hannah, Meg, and Carter are each one part of the puzzle. Lurking in their shadows is an even greater danger, one with the power to consume all of humanity. So, low stakes.
Low stakes. There was also on the Amazon page, I noticed the way that they promoted this was survival can be murder.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So good. So good.
Really good.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, I'm going to have you read the first pages as well, because I only have my Kindle version and it'll be a little more dramatic if we can read it. And then I want to talk about after we read the first pages. And I think there's the first page that's like the crow part, right? Let's just
Yeah,
stick
it's
with
sort of
that
a
one.
prologue without being labeled as such a
Yes.
prologue, but yes, it is. You want to? I want to read, like, let's read that, and then we'll talk about
And
it.
then we'll
Just
talk about, yeah.
perfect. Because it's delicious.
It is delicious.
They circled the body in the snow, scavengers, looking for anything they might strip from the corpse. It was half buried, frozen in the drift. Legs and arms splayed, a perfect snow angel. Bright blue eyes surrounded by frosty lashes stared up in an equally bright blue sky. The storm had passed. Eventually, one of the group grew braver. It landed on the chest of the dead human and poked tentatively at its face, pecking at the lips and nose. Then it stuck its beak into one of the blue eyes. It tugged and finally pulled the eye free with a small pop. Satisfied with its prize, it hopped away and flapped off into a nearby pine tree. The rest of the crows, emboldened, descended upon the corpse in a bluster of black wings. Within minutes, the body was completely faceless, unrecognizable. Later that night, bigger predators would come. By morning, there would be nothing left but a ragged carcass. A week later, a hunter would shoot a wolf. A sickly-looking thing, but wolf meat was as good as any to feed his family. Soon afterward, the hunter would fall ill and die. Then his family, then his family's friends. And the crows would fall from the sky.
Hmm. I wonder if The Crows Would Fall from the Sky was a potential title. It's so good.
Actually, yeah, I mean, the drift
Right.
works really, really well.
The drift
Like,
works for on many different levels, and we'll talk about
but
that. But yeah.
yes, the crows
Okay.
would fall from the sky.
So
The crows fell from the sky.
yes, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
it is.
So this initial chapter, it's like omniscient POV, which is a bold choice for a thriller in general, but it totally works. It also sets us up in a moment in time. We have hints of this pandemic that they're dealing with. And CJ Tudor has a little note in the back where she's like, I started writing this, I think before the pandemic. And then when it was done, it was like, well, now's not the time to release a novel about a virus killing the entire world. So waited a little bit. And then it was released, I believe, in 2023. No, 24. It was 24. No, 23.
I think it was 23 because I
23.
saw that note too. I think it was like, oh, they'd sold it in
Right.
2019. So, okay,
Yeah,
great. And 2020, of course, happens. And yeah, no one
that's what
wants
it
to
was.
read
Yeah.
the plague book.
The plague book. Yeah. So we're dealing with a plague and we understand, somebody eating wolf meat. I'm a city gal. I don't know how common that is in just general, but it seems like about a fairly desperate situation, right?
I grew up in a very small town in New Hampshire and definitely know hunters. I've had hunters in my family. I've never heard of anyone eating wolf meat. I'm sure
Okay.
that people do, but it's not a common thing.
Okay.
By any means.
So we've established that that this is bad, right? Like, and then we understand that the transmission vector comes from eating. It's very easy. It's starting to kill people. It's a dire situation, as you said, like low stakes.
Yeah.
Right. And it's killing animals too. And it's gonna take over the world. And so when we look back at the book jacket copy and we have one with the power to consume all of humanity, we have no hint in the book jacket copy that this is a pandemic. We don't know what's going on or, the worldwide disaster. Like we understand that there's some stuff and people are confused about where they're waking up and all of that, but we know nothing about the stakes. And so this like what 2-paragraph opening prologue establishes so much about the tension of the story before we even dive into any of these people's POVs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one, like, the book jacket is one layer, and I think you probably kind of come away from it, or at least I would come away from it thinking, okay, like probably like nuclear holocaust kind of
Yeah.
thing, something like that. And also that these three groups of people are going to have to fight for survival. And I will say this maintained throughout for me for a long, long time until like twists were revealed, that all of these groups in some form or fashion would be working their way towards each other. And that would sort of
Yes.
final clash or the final confrontation is they're all going to end up together and things are going to happen and get resolved.
So well said. So well said. Because that's
not at all what happens.
Not at all what happens. Yeah. But the expectation, you're right. When we have multiple POVs and you're in a thriller where she's just bless you, CJ Tudor. She's dealing with what the reader expects And she's playing on the fact that, as you just said, we're going to expect that all these people are in the same time and that
Mm-hmm.
all of this is happening at the same time and that they're all like in the same, like, 1 week period or whatever. And it's just, you don't even see that she's messing with you until the very, very end when stuff starts to get revealed. And it's just like, it's sort of a slow burn novel, to be honest. Like, we have these three POVs and they all have stuff they're dealing with, and each separate POV is its own little mini thriller, right? Like, it's like, how are they going to get out? Are they going to survive? What the hell is in the
All very
basement?
high stakes for each set of people. Like
Yes.
that's actually a perfect way of putting it. She has three little mini thrillers that all come together towards the very end and get resolved that way in
Yeah.
ways that you cannot see coming. But yeah, it's a great way of thinking about it.
It works beautifully, but I just love that, this is something we can all think of as thriller writers and readers, is like, we come into stuff with expectations. So, it's the same thing when you write fantasy. You've got to consider, like, what's the lore about unicorns and trolls and fairies, and and you have to understand how to correct that for your version of the novel,
Mm-hmm.
of your story, by understanding what's out there and around. And in the thriller genre, and this is absolutely just a straight up thriller, um, we're dealing with the fact that readers will expect this certain thing and they will have no reason to expect otherwise unless we tell them. And she just did this so beautifully. And yeah. So there's a lot of time messing, and it turns out that this opening scene, spoiler alert, if you're listening to us now, like, I'm about to ruin it.
Yep.
This opening scene is actually what occurs directly after, or like, a few days later, whatever, a month after the very ending scene. And it's the language that she uses in this opening is very much the same as the like final like lines of the book. And I just remember like shutting the book, or hitting close on my Kindle and being like, what? And it's just so amazing. Yeah.
It feels like, I think you and I have talked about this on other deep dives before, but I think one of the most fun things as a reader, and one of the great things that you can do as a writer, especially in thrillers, is to make the reader be able to look back after having read it and be so satisfied, and just be like,
Oh my
that
God.
was like, so I was just in the hands of someone who knew what they were doing so well,
Yes.
just not only met my expectations, but like tweaked them in the best ways of
Yeah.
like, this is not what I was expecting, but it's the not expecting part was so super satisfying too. And I love a first full circle moment. I mean,
Yeah.
all books of any genre should
Yeah.
have that full circle moment, and this one was just like, chef's
Yeah.
kiss.
Yeah. Yes. All that. There's also the fact that these three POVs are actually, they contain the same person throughout all
Yes.
of them.
Yeah.
And you don't see it. You don't even suspect it. And this is one of these like fairly tropey things, right? It's like, oh, I'm pretending to be this other person and I have this different name and I'm whatever. And if it had been in the same timeline, it obviously wouldn't have worked, right? But this is actually the story of Carter and how he appears in each of these. And because we have his POV, it's his viewpoint when he's in the retreat, this center, and he's kind of powerless, right? Like, he's there, and we learn over time through his mini thriller that he has reasons for being there, and he has, his North Star is his sister. And then we have, in the coach, Hannah is the POV from there, and she's heavily related to the man behind the curtain, who's the one who was, I don't know, I mean, he's a scientist and he was responsible for trying to solve it to make the vaccine.
I mean,
But
he's the mastermind villain.
he's the mastermind villain. Yeah. He's the one that we ultimately face. That's a really good way of describing him. But he also, just to spoil it, like, he uses humans who have been infected to build the vaccine. And so this is like horrible, like, body horror stuff where, like, you have people who have lost all their agency, are being held captive, and are like milked for their
Yeah.
plasma. And it's horrifying. And
Mhm.
so Hannah is his daughter, and we learn that over time too. Like, and I'll get into this in a minute, but like the twists, like the 50% midpoint twist worked for each of their stories. Like, the way that she releases each of the midpoints is all within like the 48 to 52% mark of the book
That's
itself.
good. Yeah, I think I noticed like that I was looking for it and I found it in one of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it was the slow burnness. I think you kind of nailed it there. So we'll definitely talk more about each of these points.
Yeah.
So
And
sorry,
then,
interrupt. Continue.
yeah, no, and then just to explain the POV. So it's Hannah, Megan, Carter. Hannah's in the coach, this bus that crashes. Carter's in this retreat. He's like safe from the storm, but he has to go do some stuff. And it's obviously like scary out there. And then Meg is stuck in this cable car 1,000 feet above a valley, and it's a snowstorm, and nobody in the cable car knows how they got there or what's going on. So it's just we enter into it and it's just like it just goes from there. There's no point in any of these stories where we're like, I'm bored, right? Like it's all
I
just
think in at least two of the three, in Hannah and Meg's situations, from the get-go, they're dealing with dead bodies.
yes,
Right?
so many dead
Because
bodies.
the coach has crashed and half of the people in the coach have died just in
Yeah.
the crash itself. When Meg wakes up in the cable car, there's 5 or 6 of them in there. One of them is dead right
Hmm.
off the bat. And not only is he dead, but he's been murdered. So it's
Yes.
not like, oh, he just like fell asleep and whoops, something happened, or
The little
like he
locked room
took too much of the
mystery.
drugs. Like, no, somebody has stabbed him
Yeah.
multiple times. And so you've got a locked door mystery right there, right? Not a locked door mystery thriller of like, well, who is this guy and what happened to him? And then I don't
Yeah.
think Carter has a dead body right away, but they certainly start piling up for poor
They
Carter.
they pile up very quickly. Yeah. And so it's interesting how how CJ Tudor dribbled out the information for each of these, because we understand there's a pandemic from this crow perspective,
Mm.
but we don't understand like when all of this exists. We make the assumption it's all happening at the same time, which is, well established. Um, but we understand that like there's an infection and it's a big deal. And I think we first learned about it from Hannah, about the infection in like, Carter's is like, obviously there's the pandemic is a thing and there's people in the basement. There's like isolation chambers, and there's whistlers are the people who have survived the virus but go insane,
Mm.
and eat human flesh. It's like a bit of a zombie vibe. But Hannah is the one who's in this coach of school children, and somebody's infected, and it's like she goes through the percentages. It's like well established that if I'm making this up, that's in the book, but it's like 75% chance of survival if you've been in, or no, 25% chance of survival if you've been infected. If you survive that, then you have a 98% chance of becoming a whistler. Like it's just,
You
there's
nailed
really
it.
like,
Those are the numbers.
are they? Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but it's like it's bad, right? Like this is not, it's not, it's bad. So there are dire consequences, and it's also once you've been infected, that's it. There's just
and and it's like super super contagious. It's not just
yes.
like, so we see the crows have contracted it because they've eaten this corpse that has it, but she tells us pretty early on, I believe it's from Hannah's point of view, it's like
Yeah.
it's airborne. You can get it from breath, sweat, blood, like
Blood, yeah, all of it.
like existing. You have an excellent chance of contracting this.
Yeah.
And I think we find out fairly early on, although not right in the first chapter, but fairly early on, that there's I think 12 people on the coach, and 2 of them
Hmm.
are infected.
Yeah. And so
So
automatic suspense stakes, like we don't know who's going to, we don't know what's going to happen, but we know this is a bad situation, contained environment with 2 infected people, like not great. And from
so they got
Carter's,
a virus,
yeah,
Meg's got a murderer, and Carter just has all kinds like that. The You get the sense, I think, right away that like the retreat, I mean, it's called the retreat, so that
hmm,
sort of gives you a certain sense of like, serenity is the word that comes to
yeah,
mind. It's not the right word because it's not a serene place at all, but it feels like the safest place to be
yes,
in the
yes,
midst of all of this. Like there is a lot of mind fuckery going on in this place, but you're not. I think we learned fairly early on that because they have this plasma, like they're getting vaccinated, so
hmm,
they're safe from the greatest threat out there, which is the disease.
yeah.
So that feels like the safest place.
And they
Um,
also have, I was just, the way you just triggered something in what you were saying about him being the safest. Like he's in a sturdy building. The other
mhm.
2 are in very precarious situations, like a cable car with no power. You're
Right.
going to die in there unless somebody crawls out, right? Or somebody goes and turns it on. The coach has been crashed. They're in a snowbank. It's freezing. People are starting to like die from the crash. We learn very quickly there's a young girl who is dying.
Mhm.
Um,
And it's been
and
sabotaged because people, you think,
yes,
oh, okay, well, you've landed in the snowdrift. They're like, oh, we can't get out. And they're like, well, smash a window and we can climb out. I mean, even if they get out, they still have to face like they're in the middle of the woods. There's this terrible storm
yeah,
going on, but someone has sabotaged the coach. So there's no way for them to get like smash their way out of a window
yeah.
because the hammers have been taken and someone broke the emergency exit on purpose. So they're trapped like just as much as Meg is trapped in the cable car. So
Exactly. Well, it's another little locked room story,
yes,
right?
yep,
And so, and CJ Tudor gradually removes avenues of escape. So they do have somebody who gets outside and then immediately gets eaten by a wolf, right?
yep.
Like
No, it's a bear.
disgusting
Gets
bear,
eaten by a
sorry.
bear.
Like a scary virus bear. Like it just gross. Like it's just very visceral and you're like, okay, so that's not an option just to like walk away. And
Nope.
then they try to tunnel out, and then there's a bomb, and they figure out that like someone's trying to bomb the coach, and so it just keeps escalating. And this is one of those lessons that like I just want to like tattoo on myself is like always escalate, right? Like we do not read thrillers to feel calm. I mean,
No.
those of us who love them do feel calm when we read about murder, but like whatever. There's a big swath of the world who agrees with me there, so I don't feel weird. Um, but we have this, the cable car is like, okay, well, you could hang out and not do anything, but then one of the cables breaks.
Hmm.
There's also a murderer in there with you. You have this other woman, Sarah, who like kind of pushes somebody out of the thing in the floor, and
Yes.
we're like, well, what's going on there?
Yep.
You know?
No, their
And
numbers start dwindling in very nefarious ways real quick.
yes, yes. And so no one's comfortable. Like this is just a
Nope.
situation where there's a lot of chaos in all three of them, and it's going to escalate to the point where it breaks. And then we expect that break to be with all three of them meeting each other, but of course it doesn't. So,
Well, and to
um,
your point that you were just saying, and I think this is a really great lesson. I know I need to recall this lesson almost always. So, as a writer, and all the writers out there that are watching this, it can feel very uncomfortable because you kind of like your characters, or at
you
least you like
do.
your main character.
Yeah.
There's a reason that you want to spend all that time in their head, right? Because you're spending a lot of time in their head if you're writing about them over the year or two or whatever. Um, so it can sometimes be hard to like turn up the pressure and set the tree on fire, as you have said before. You
Rachel
have
Aaron.
to set the tree on fire. Have to make life worse for them. You
Yeah.
have to make them test themselves and see what they're made of. That's what keeps the reader reading. So
Yeah.
don't forget, as uncomfortable as it is, like deep breaths and work through the discomfort, and channel CJ Tudor because
Hmm.
she knows how to do it. She does. She gives you a master class in it right here.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, from the first page, this book is just like, it just keeps going. But again, it's a bit of a slow burn, right? Because we're like,
It
okay,
is.
we have these three separate POVs and they're all fighting their own things and we're in it for the ride, right? We're like,
Mhm.
yep, I'm happy to just see what happens to all these people and for them. I'm really glad I'm not in any of these situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but then we start getting into these reveals of what's actually going on, which are twisty because we don't see them coming.
Mhm.
And so I'll do the midpoints first. So the way that the POVs go, it's I think Hannah, Meg, Carter, and it repeats in that order
Yep.
up until Hannah and Meg both die, which is like such a bold, it's like one of the things where you're like, wait, you just killed off two of the POV characters. Like what's actually going on, which is a meta like sort of hint that Carter is the person who we should actually have been paying attention to this whole time.
Yes.
But I remember when I was reading this the first time, I was like, but you can't do that. You can't kill off your POV characters. And she totally does. And so I'm like, oh, is what's happening. I'm in it. But that's kind of the point where it starts to escalate and you're just like ripping through the pages even more than you already were.
Yeah.
So at 49%, Meg, who's in the cable car, finds a gun on the roof. And it's
Mm,
like, that's been there the whole time. And so what is going on? And at that point, I think there's only Meg, Sarah, Sean left out of, oops, sorry. Meg, Sarah, and Sean left in the cable car after like the other two have been pushed out or died, or the murdered guy has been pushed out because they were trying to deal with like not having a dead body around, right?
murdered guy was pushed out, and then the person that Sarah thought had murdered the murdered guy, she pushes him out.
Right.
Claims not to, but we all saw her do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it turns out that Meg knew the dead guy, right?
Yes.
He was a cop and
He
she
was a
dated
cop
him.
back in the day, and so was he, and so she dated him, and there was something that, like, even though he woke up dead, they knew that he was identifying himself as different. Like, she knew him as Paul.
Paul. Yeah.
His name was something different in
Yeah.
this environment. So we know that, like, oh, who else isn't telling the truth about who they are? So she sets up
Yes.
right away that people may not be what they seem,
Yes.
but she also sets up, and I think in this really nice way, that this group of people on the cable car are maybe there because they've done some not so great things in the past. We find out they've all been in prison, right? Except for Sarah. Sarah hadn't been in prison. No.
Yeah. But that's part of the mystery, is like, how are they all connected? Why are they here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So it is. It's all like, no one is who they say they are, or and their reasons for doing things are like, they might state one reason, but we can't trust that that's actually the reason that they're there or what they're
yes.
motivated by. So
Yes. But when you bring a gun into this, it changes everything. Like, that's truly a midpoint turn for Meg's story, is like, okay, the stakes are now incredibly high, right? And I can't go back. Like, we're not getting out of this. I'm either going to have to kill to survive murder, survival is murder. Or, I die. Like, these are the choices. In Carter's, we like Jimmy Quinn shows up, and Jimmy Quinn is this sub character who kind of runs things in this town below the retreats. The retreat's up the mountain, and the cable car station, we know geographically that the cable car station is within walking distance of the retreat, which is another thing she did to make us think like, oh, well, he can go rescue Meg, right? Because we're seeing Meg's POV about all of it. And Jimmy Quinn is somebody that they have to pay off in terms of giving him plasma so that he will provide them food. And so they have this like mutual assured destruction situation happening. Jimmy Quinn is very scary. He has two sons. And we quickly learn that Carter has like a side deal with one of them. And he's sending plasma to this unknown other person. And we're like, okay, we kind of like you for that. Like that, you're clearly like lying about what you're doing, but because we're in your head, we get it. And then in the coach, Peggy is the little sister, Daniel is the brother, Peggy is dying. And then we learn that Peggy is dying and also giving birth. She's in labor. And so Hannah is handed a knife and with the instruction to cesarean a baby out of this dying, teenager. She's like 16 or something. And Daniel, her brother, is young as well. And it turns out we learned, I don't know, like 15% after that, at 68%, that Daniel was driving the coach, or he's the driver, and this is how it's presented. And so we're like, wait, what? Like, what's going on? And it kind of seems like Daniel and Peggy are maybe not like the rest of them. And
that was one of the big mysteries, is that there was the driver, that they were counting up making sure everybody was accounted for. And
yes.
The driver, as far as we know, the driver's gone.
Like, where did he go?
Anna figures out that, like, she sits in the seat and is like, I'm pretty tall and I can't touch the pedals. So whoever was driving this bus was quite tall, but the jacket that they left behind is a size small, and there's no way that would fit somebody. So now, were there two drivers? And like, where did they go? And what happened? How did the switch hang out? Like, so this whole time I'm going like, I was a little freaked out about the whole driver thing and how that was going to get. And then it was just like, oh, Daniel, damn, that's good. Like,
yeah.
Because he did not, I mean, he was absolutely the whole time. He was the very, he's worried about Peggy. He's taking care of Peggy. He pretty much knows, and he doesn't like try too much to get Hannah to sugarcoat like she's gonna die. She's just very, very injured, and she's not gonna make it. But he wants to stay with her as long as he can. He wants to make her as comfortable as he can. So you see him in the role of brother, and that's it. But when she puts that piece in place where you like see, like, she was at the academy, he got a job there so he could watch over her, and then like he knocked out the original driver in the bathroom back at the academy and took over. Like, all of the pieces, it's just like, oh yeah, okay, yes, that all makes sense, that all works logically, that he could do that. But you would never see him in that role, because all we've seen him as is a very believable, dutiful brother, because that's also who he is.
Through Hannah's POV, right? Which is why, CJ Tudor could have made it wouldn't have worked. So it's obviously this is why she did it this way, but like, she could have, had it be from the POV of Daniel, who is actually Sean, who is actually Carter, right? She could have had it be from Daniel's POV in the coach and from Sean's POV in the cable car and Carter's POV and mess with us that way. And it's like, oh, actually, these are all the same person because he was present in all of them. It's just different
Yeah,
times,
absolutely.
right? But it's so much more interesting and there's so much more opportunity for misdirection by having it with somebody else's POV and these other ones. And we needed one of them to be his POV because he has to survive, right?
Yes. He has to tie up all the threads at the end.
Yeah, but it's a choice, right? She made a choice. It could have probably worked, not as well, but it could have worked if we'd had it be from this same person's POV in all three. And then the twist is that it's all different times and it's all the same person.
Yeah, so
But
we should probably explicitly just say that. So Daniel is in Hannah's timeline.
yeah,
Daniel is Daniel,
is the brother of Peggy who's
brother of
dying.
Peggy.
Yeah,
And then the Meg timeline is in the future from like if we start from this is like Hannah's POV because that's where we
yes,
start off the story, right?
yes,
That's where we're oriented at the very beginning. Then Meg's timeline is in the future, but we don't know that for a long, long time. And in
yeah,
Meg's timeline, Sean, who is Daniel, is in the cable car with Meg. And
uh-huh,
so they're making all of these, decisions, talk about people not being who they said they were.
yeah,
And then in Carter's POV, we find out that Carter is Sean, is Daniel. And his timeline is even more in the future.
yes.
Not terribly, like not as much of a gap between the Hannah POV and the
Yeah, it's like 10 years or whatever,
years and
because
3 years, I think.
the baby, Peggy's baby ends up being the child that Carter in Carter's timeline is sending plasma to help. And so, and she's like, 15 or whatever. So it's like 15 years. I'm just now noticing that the POV order is the timeline, which of course I should have noticed like out of the gate once I finished reading
There
this.
were too
But
many other things that were like pulling
yeah.
together
So
to
we
really.
start, it's like Hannah, Meg, Carter, Hannah, Meg, Carter. And so we're looking at yeah, very well said. Very well called out.
Well, that's
Um,
like I think you just need to understand because when I finally was started putting pieces together, I was just like, again, these twists are so well. Like I was a little like, oh, that's how you're messing with us. It's timeline. That's
yes,
so like because I so like sometimes I can maybe try to guess at things or get hints of like I had no clue that
I had
that's
no clue
but
either. It's
that's
so
what
masterful. Yeah.
yeah because
And
it's
it's,
completely believable that all of the things that are happening in each of these povs could be happening on the same timeline
yeah.
because it's all centered around this disease
Yep.
that is ultimately driving all of the plot and everything that's happening. They're all reacting to the disease and the things that are happening because of that, which could easily just be happening at the very initial point, which I don't know if we explicitly learn, but in Hannah's POV, like the disease has been around for a little while, right? I
Hmm.
mean, things have been established, but
Yeah.
it's still relatively new, I think, in terms of,
Yeah.
and then obviously as we jump ahead in time, people have learned to live with it and all of this other terrible shit. Like to your point about like, the milking of the plasma and
Ugh.
the waters and everything. Yeah. They call them farms, I think.
Farms and or seclusion centers as like somebody
Inclusion
else.
centers was the nice name for them,
Yeah.
and it became known as the farms. And you're just like, oh, like
Yeah.
that's
And then interestingly, the beginning, the crow scene, that's after everything, right? We established that up front, but that's even more of like this timeline that we have made assumptions about. And we maybe assume because it feels like a prologue that this was like the beginning of the pandemic. And this is what started the whole thing. Whereas actually it's after Carter dies. And that man that the crows are eating is Carter.
yeah. I just jumped ahead to it's not the very end of the book because we kind of get an epilogue
Okay.
and without it being labeled an epilogue.
Oh, that's right, with Ava. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And she literally, the last few paragraphs of the book are almost like, I think, probably verbatim, the last few paragraphs of the
Yeah.
epilogue or sorry, the prologue that isn't necessarily a prologue. It's like, ooh,
Yeah.
that like really
It's
just
mm,
beautifully. Yeah.
it's awesome.
And then it says 3,500 miles away. And then all of
Yeah.
a sudden, that like Eva, who was the baby in Hannah's POV, um, and the last we have seen of her, when we last see Eva, she's a baby, and Hannah has sacrificed herself,
Herself to save
knowing
her.
that that's the only way that she can save Eva
Yeah.
and Daniel. Although she's not sure about Daniel because she says like, my father doesn't care about any, like, he doesn't care, like, his goal is to stop this disease, and he doesn't, and Daniel is even at that point like, everybody is like, well, he cares about you, right? Like, he would never
And she's
sacrifice
like,
you. Like,
nope.
oh shit, no, he'll sacrifice me. And sure enough, he shoots her in the
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
I
And
do have to say, at the very end of her POV, I think like they hint at like that she was found by a whistler, maybe. And I was waiting for her to come back a little bit. I'm glad she didn't, because
yeah,
that would have been like too much, I think. But I was like, oh, I like looking back on the whole thing now. I'm like, oh, I like that she like did leave that little bit of ambiguity there about like, did
totally.
she survive? Because she was infected. We find out that
Right.
she was one of the infected people on the coach. So yeah.
Yeah. Very well said. And it's also like the Hannah timeline is the one that establishes Carter's entire goal as, like his sole goal is to kill Hannah's dad.
Mhm.
Because Hannah's dad, it turns out, arranged for that coach to have been sabotaged and to kill all of them because he knew that there were infected people on board, right? And he didn't want anything to escape. Yeah,
Right.
including his daughter. And
Yeah. Well,
so,
he didn't. I don't know if he knew Hannah was infected at that point, but he knew there was other. The thing that they set it up as saying like the academy is full of. There's two different kinds of people that go to the academy: the rich kids and then the
mhm,
scholarship kids. Peggy was a scholarship kid. Daniel had a job there, um, and so these two infected kids have been allowed to leave because they had rich parents who bought their
right,
way out. And her father couldn't stop that, so his way of stopping it was like, I'm going to sabotage the
I'm gonna
coach
blow
and
up
kill
the
everybody.
bus. Yeah,
And who cares that my daughter is also on it? Doesn't matter.
yeah,
So that's
brutal.
a that's a
So
real treasure.
he's definitely a mastermind villain. He's, not very likable, but also has very clear goals, right? His goal is to stop the virus regardless of the consequences. And of course he fails. So we'll get into that in just a second. I want to get through
Oh yeah, sorry.
like when we oh no. We could go on for days with this one. Um so, as we get to the climactic scenes for each of them, so we have these midpoint turns where everything just starts to escalate. And then we get into like the 82, 83, 84. So in 82%, Carter goes to the cable car station where the reader thinks Meg and Sean are, but of course they've already been dead. And so we're leading up to this climactic twist. Carter himself, doesn't really ever, he does have an emotional aha moment at the very end. It's after the climactic scene because he chooses death. He's like, well, I'm not doing this. This is the way. Um, Meg also has a climactic aha moment where she realizes and makes a choice about uh it's either neither of them are going to escape or someone's going to die, and she can't let Sean go because he's going to wreak havoc and is clearly like not a good person, right? Um, and so in the 84% Meg timeline, she confronts Sean, and we also learn that he's Daniel. Basically, we make that leap. And it's like, what happened to your sister? Right. Meg remembers the news article about Daniel and his sister surviving, or Daniel
Daniel and
surviving.
yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why she recognized like the beautiful young girl and Daniel, but there was like something familiar about Sean this whole time. And so we make that connection there and we're like, holy shit. Okay. So timeline
And
stuff.
has a tattoo of Peggy on his
Yes.
chest,
Yes,
right?
that's right. That's right. And so we're like, okay, so Daniel's the villain, right? He wants to kill Grant, which is Hannah's father, for killing his family. He explains the knife on the board. We learn that Meg almost killed one of the doctors that failed her daughter. So her daughter is her North Star and the reason that she's willing to just give up everything. And Meg decides to choose Sarah, who's been left on the cable car because Sarah was too scared to leave. So Meg like hand crawls
That
on,
was
just horrifying,
yeah.
on like a single cable all the way to the cable car station, confronts Sean. And then, we flip to Carter and we see it's like 86% or something. It's been closed for over a decade. And so we're like, so who stopped the cable car for Meg and Sean? Because we still don't understand that the timelines are what's happening. And then we see burnt out skeleton of old snowmobile. And we then switch to Meg and we see her blow up the snowmobile. And so we start to firmly establish like what's been going on. And so Meg has this aha moment and like this decision in her climactic moment where she's about to die, where she says, I stopped you because caring is all we have left. She sees her daughter, she chooses death. Um, and before that in the Hannah one, that's when Hannah is killed by her dad was 83%. So we have all three of these climactic moments coming together beautifully, right at the percentages that are predicted, which love that. And then we flip to just Carter's POV. So we have 89%. We learn that Miles sabotaged the cable car, and that Carter is Sean, is Daniel, because somebody says to him, returning to the scene of the crime, Sean. And that's how we end that. And then we have this other little chapter where Carter thinks that he sees Meg, and it's a little confusing. It turns out it's just a vision. And we learn that, yeah, do you remember that?
Is she back?
Yeah. And then we learned that Carter had been waiting 13 years to kill the man inside isolation chamber 13. And so it's like, okay, here's Carter's climactic, right? But we're at like 90%. So it's already like he's already had his showdown, emotional moment where he's going to the cable car station and learns what Miles has done and understands what everything happened. And then it's like, then we're just on this like upward trajectory for what's going to happen from there. And then we go to chapter 1, Carter. Did you notice that? At like 90%. And then we have these chapters where it's like,
it's chapter 1. Yeah.
yeah. And, we learn what actually happens with Carter. And, it turns out that Grant was not actually in the isolation chamber, and Miles is dead, and Welland, this other guy who was there, is like totally insane and he's not Welland too. Yeah. He's like
another person who has stolen an identity from somebody and passing himself off as somebody else.
Yes. Yes.
But again, not in that like kind of cheaty way where you feel like, oh, like, did you know? It was that, I mean, he was there. He was already at the retreat. It was like, he was somebody at one point in the retreat, there was like this big outbreak. And so one of the people who died, he managed to like steal that person's identity and turn himself into a maintenance person when he was just like a cleaning.
He was a janitor, yeah. So he didn't really know anything.
Yeah, which is why when everything starts to melt down and Miles is like, why aren't you fixing it? Like, then it becomes like, oh, well, that's why, because he had no freaking clue what he was doing.
No clue what he was doing.
He couldn't fix it if he wanted to.
Yeah. And there's all these, the thing I loved best about like the chapter 1 was we learn what drift means. So we assume that drift is about snow, right? Because we have that in the very first chapter. It's like cold drift and it's the snowy cover. And so that's where my brain went. And then it turns out that drift is Department of Research into Infection and Future Transmission. Genius. Yep. And then it's just, like there's all these little twists and turns with what Welland was actually up to, and the fact that he's just been dumping these bodies, and a whistler comes and drops off a lanyard from the people that used to work there. So it's clear that the whistlers are the people who worked and are infected. And, Carter decides to choose death versus being a whistler. And so that's his ultimate decision. And it's like 4 days after he figures out that Dexter the dog has been eating infected bodies. Oh God, it was so gross.
It was so awful.
This is a pretty gory book. Like there are definitely some visceral descriptions of stuff. And I think that she set it up so well in the beginning with the popping eyeball, and like you just get some very strong hints that this is not going to be something that's like safe for children.
Yeah, no, if you make it through that prologue, I mean, the prologue is pretty explicit, then I think talk about like setting reader expectations for the reader. She's letting you know right there, like she's not messing around. Like this is gonna be next level, like visceral kind of horror in a way.
Yeah, body horror, right? It's good.
Yeah, it is. It's, I right off the bat, I was like, oh, and then I'm like, oh, give me more.
Yeah.
Why we read this, right? But I thought, I'm that moment with Dexter, I was like, oh God, because she's done a really great job, I think, throughout of like Dexter is kind of like this
Dexter's the dog, just for reference.
The dog.
Yeah.
He is kind of our like release valve a little bit. So like when things are getting like super dark and everybody's dying and we don't know what's happening and the whistlers are coming and who else is coming and everything else is like, then here comes Dexter and he's licking his balls all the time. Like he always licking his balls. So it is these moments where you're like, okay, like when you need a moment to breathe, like here he comes and it's great. And then, so you're ready for that. Like, oh God, I mean, there's a little bit of, what's going to happen. Like I'm always, does the dog die? Does the dog die?
The dog does not die. The dog does he? Wait.
But in a like a very quick moment
Oh
of
God, I totally blocked that.
no, it's in like it's in like the probably the 98, 99%. It's when Carter Daniel chooses to die. He
Oh,
actually it says like one line, it's like he shot Dexter because it wouldn't be
okay.
fair to Dexter to leave him alone, which normally I would be like, she killed the dog, that's it, I'm out. But in that moment, I was like, okay, like
It's the
first of
humane
all,
thing
he's
to
been
do.
eating infected bodies, so he's probably not going to be well for long anyway. And it's the humane thing to do for Dexter.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, I was okay with it as I could be. But just that it's like, okay, his companion, and not only is he always licking his balls, but then he's licking people's faces, and throughout, people are talking about how
How he
terrible
licks
Dexter's breath
breath
is.
smells. Yes.
And then you find out why, and it's like, oh my God.
It's so gross. But like, what a good example, just to bring it back to our teaching of like,
Thank you.
here's the story surface, right? And you have Dexter, this little villain clue of like Dexter's breath smells. And you're like, it's a dog, dude. Like dogs' breaths never smell good. They lick all kinds of stuff, right? But then when we learn the truth, the reveal of like what's actually going on, which is that he's been eating infected bodies in the woods because Welland's not actually been incinerating anything. He's just been dumping them. And these whistlers that we're all so scared of are actually people who used to work there and are trying to like come to our, come be a zombie with us. It's
Mhm.
just like it works so, so well. So, so well.
Yep.
Um,
Because it all comes together, right? And it all, it's that logic. It all makes sense and it's
yeah.
believable. It's what do we hear a lot? Or sorry, I know you weren't sitting with me at Thriller Fest this past, but the thing that I heard at Thriller Fest over and over again about twist was like unexpected or surprising, but believable.
But believable. Yep.
Believable.
It's gotta make
Those two
sense. You've got
elements
it.
are like what make that twist and make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the clues are there the whole time in all three of these timelines. Once you understand that Carter is Sean as Daniel, you look back and you're like, yeah, Daniel was obsessed with his sister, like not in a gross way, just like that's his North Star, is his sister. He will do anything to protect her. Sean needs to get to the research center. He knows that Dr. Grant is there, but he's not revealing that. All we know is that he has this, like, he's willing to like do scary stuff to get there, and he's willing to sacrifice other people to get there because now his North Star is killing Dr. Grant. Once he's in the research center as Carter, we know that he's playing a long game, right? Like he has a picture that he never shows anybody. He has all these secrets. He tries to like, the phone that he brings up to Miles. Do you remember that scene? And he says,
That
Welland,
was it was hidden in the
the
shower drain.
shower.
Somebody else's one of the characters who dies.
Yeah. But
Um,
that's a
eight,
misdirection
eight.
from Carter to
Yes.
like just get closer to where he needs to go, because his whole thing was to get close to Miles to get the code to get into isolation chamber 13 so he could kill Dr. Grant.
Yeah.
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 And
It is playing a long, long game.
long game, but it's one of those things with a villain that like it works, right?
Mhm.
It's like this is one of the motivations that like it makes sense, and he's willing to go and never turn back because this is what he's chosen.
Because Miles is a bit of a villain himself. I mean,
Miles is a nightmare. Yeah.
yeah. And so he had to play this long game because if he had just come in guns a blazing, like he would never have gotten his opportunity because
Yeah.
Miles would have shut him down immediately. So
Yeah.
it all makes sense. Why, like, you're like, why did he have to wait 3 years to go through this? Well, because he wouldn't have gotten his opportunity otherwise. And he obviously
Exactly.
worked really hard and sacrificed a lot to get there. And he's not going to let a little thing like a couple of years of building trust with this other pretty evil guy who's running everything get
Yeah.
in the way of him ultimately
Yeah.
achieving.
And it also explains like his okayness. There's a better way of saying that. His approval of his lack of power in the hierarchy, right? Like Miles is kind of rude to him, and like as Carter is not that likable of a POV character. Like we know he has secrets and we're like, okay, you're doing something, but you're also kind of whiny. And
Yeah.
like we're not really on his side, but we're like, I'm willing to, as a reader, go with this because the other two have such agency and are just like, well, what is happening? And the other clue about Carter that I thought was so masterfully done is that he's missing half of his face from frostbite. And so we learned that in Carter's POV, like in the first page. And when we see the snowmobile explosion, when Meg blows up the snowmobile around Sean, that blows Sean away and he falls. And so it's 4 days later before Miles ever found him. And Miles was the one who went to go shut down the cable car. Miles shut down the cable car to stop them from getting there.
Yeah.
Right. And so Miles is the one who was like a villain but he had his own reasons for doing it. He was protecting, et cetera, et cetera. Dr. Grant, it turns out, was never actually in Isolation Chamber 13 or like escaped pretty soon after or something. And so Miles that was his one bargaining chip that he had, was like, oh, we're protecting Dr. Grant. And yeah, it's just like, And then the 98% twist is we see Eva, and it's, we meet her as just she. We don't learn that it's Eva until the very last line of the book, I think. But she's nursed her parents while they were infected. She's unvaccinated. And she is immune, it kind of seems like.
It does sort of hint at, I don't know if it ever says it explicitly, but that is sort of, yeah, that's why they want to study her, right?
Right. And so she escapes. She like holds the
experiment.
Yeah. And so she drives away. She doesn't know who's been sending her plasma all this time. Of course, it was Carter, who is her uncle, and she drives away off into the sunset. And so in that way, this is actually kind of it borders up on horror, because we have chaos to order resolved because all three of our POV characters are dead. Right. And then we switch and it's like, well, now what's going to happen? And that open-ended, like, that's a hallmark of horror versus thrillers. Like we don't resolve all the chaos in horror. And there's an open-ended thing with this that I really, really liked. But
yeah, no, but I also, like, I still feel like as the reader, you don't ultimately know what happens. You don't know if the pandemic ever is wrapped up, or if they're just, it's just there in perpetuity and we've learned how to live with it, and it's some sort of like, Mad Max situation kind of thing.
Feels like it. Yeah.
Station 11 kind of, whatever. It does feel like that, but you don't get those kinds of resolutions, but you do get that satisfaction of knowing that Eva made it and she's okay, and she actually has a lot of agency in her own life. So that, as a reader, you can just be like, okay.
Yeah. Like someone survived.
Yes. And probably, frankly, the person that you want to survive. Not that I didn't. I had a lot of sympathy for Hannah and Meg. Carter was a little more like,
he's tricky, but that's okay.
He's tricky, yeah, which is good. It's a good thing that he is. But like, of all the people that you'd want to survive, I think Eva was a great choice there.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And so who do you think is the protagonist in this?
I mean, it has to be Daniel, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting.
Sean / Carter.
Yes. Yeah. I agree completely. It's just that, like, first of all, he dies, which is a bold choice.
Yes. It happens, though. It does happen.
It does happen. Yeah. And he's also, the whole like name changey. We don't know that he's actually in all of these POVs. Like, we think it's Hannah, then we're like, oh, is it Meg? I don't really know. And then it's like, okay, Carter, like, one of them is going to be our protagonist. And we're kind of okay not realizing who it is until people start getting killed off, which I think is very interesting, because there's a lot of, in our coaching, we see this, right? It's like, you have to pick a protagonist. There's got to be one person who we are rooting for more than anyone else. But interestingly, we're not really rooting for Carter all that much. Like, we're rooting for him, and like, we're in his POV and we're seeing his struggles, and like, he has to do this scary ski run down through the Whistlers and like get the food and bring it back up, and like, he has secrets. And so we're like, okay, yeah, go do the thing. But Meg and Hannah are so much more likable. And it just, I don't know. This is another one where like CJ kind of broke some of these rules, but it works.
Well, I think two things that you have said are like, speak to the reason of why. And one of those is like the expectation that is established with the book jacket copy, that we go in thinking it's going to be these three stories that come together.
Yeah.
And even though they don't, by the time that they don't, because like the way the twists are revealed, we don't care that it's not followed that particular expectation. She's done enough of that expectation to get us to the point where we don't care. But also, and especially I think this is true, is because each of those storylines was so rich, like you said, they're their own mini thrillers. Like, you are following, you're reading three not three different books because it doesn't, it's all set in the same world and environment. And it's set so well in all those that that's why you don't realize that you're in different timelines. But because we care so much about each of those characters and they're like, we're very clear on their goals and their motivations.
Yeah.
So even if we don't like them per se, like with a Carter, he's probably not the most likable, but we understand and can have empathy for like what he's trying to do
Yeah,
ultimately.
totally.
Um, he doesn't seem like a super likable guy, but then again, he's surrounded by like a whole
Very
bunch of
awful
shit.
people.
Frankly, the only people who aren't awful are the ones that get killed off right away. And this is what talking about immersive details, not to derail our conversation, but I'm going to for a second.
Okay.
When he comes back from that run that you were just talking about, the grocery run, and we find out that a whistler has escaped,
Mm-hmm.
and he goes upstairs and like the lights are off or whatever, but Nate has been cooking and it looks like a bomb has gone off in the kitchen, but that's like Nate when he cooks. And then Nate is like, something's happened. And he's like, oh, Nate's banged his head. He must have a concussion. And then they go downstairs and they're doing some stuff. And he's like, huh, that bandana wasn't red before. And they untied the bandana and it's like, and the top of his head slid off and landed on the floor with a wet flap. And I was like, that is such a visceral, like amazingly awful moment. I
Awful.
was like, oh, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's so good. It's just really well done. So
Yeah.
thank you, Tudor, for that
Yep.
totally cringy and beautiful,
Thank you for
visceral.
that haunting image.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's also Carter has this like, I mean, we're on his side once we understand that he wants to kill why he wants to kill Dr. Grant, right? We're like, yeah, dude, go after it and get it.
Absolutely.
But then he has this moment. I mean, I don't want to go too much into it because it's a very graphic, gross thing, but like they're one of in the isolation
Talk about
chamber.
sliding off.
This is worse, I think. But like the isolation chambers have been opened, and his friend Karen, who's been his friend,
Oh yeah,
right?
no,
You know,
that was
yeah.
rough.
So she's infected, and they bring her in so they can get plasma, so they can pay off Jimmy Quinn, so Jimmy Quinn doesn't come kill them, right? Which all motivation. You got to always have like the reasons for doing this. It's not just random. Anyway, she is being sexually assaulted by one of the other isolation chamber, and without thinking, Carter just like kills him, like blows his head. I think he shoots him in the crotch and then he blows his head off with the shots. But he's saving enough shots so he can kill Dr. Grant. And then he realizes that Dr. Grant was never there. And then we learn that Dr. Grant was actually the Whistler who was offering the lanyard to Carter. And that's when Carter makes the decision, like, I'm not choosing Whistler life, I'm choosing death. Yeah, but he just like his arc is so painful. You know? And
Painful, but yeah. But to your point, I think ultimately, like, yeah, those moments where you see that he does have a code of like he does have some
it's a
morals
code.
code. He's not just gonna let her suffer, Karen suffer.
Yeah.
Uh, he's letting her suffer in some awful way,
Well, and he
but
kills
as
her
in
too, right? He shoots her
does
in
in
the
that
yeah,
moment
yeah.
he ultimately says like I don't care anymore about Jimmy Quinn.
Right.
Because that was the whole thing. They said like they justified what they were doing to Karen is like, well, she's infected anyway.
Right.
And if we don't do this to her, like she's probably going to die if we don't milk her,
Mm-hmm.
her plasma, we're all dead.
Right. Which is an
I'm
awful
not trying to
decision.
excuse it, but like it's again sort of an understandable motivation. But when that real awful line is crossed, he does not hesitate. He's just
Yeah.
like, no, this is not happening. So
Yeah. I just like the humanity in this. I think this is part of what makes this book so good too, is like this is an apocalyptic zombie, not zombies like traditional sense, but like it's scary, right? It's like what happens if you take away the creature comforts of humanity and like moral choices based on just living and existing together. It's like we all have to fight this thing. And so people are going to make decisions that have dire consequences, right? It just, we feel the humanity in every single one of these people. And we understand it's like, okay, I can save this person right in front of me. So I'm going to do it. Like Hannah sacrificing herself for the baby, even though she knows she's going to die and she is infected, right? And then Meg doing the same thing, being like, nope, I'm not going to let you get away with this. And I'm going to blow up both of our chances. And I'm going to yeet myself off this cliff and goodbye. And then
yep.
Carter choosing at the end to die as well. Like it's very hauntingly beautiful in terms of what humans, even at the end, even in like the most dire of circumstances, that we can still choose and have agency to control our fate, And
Yep.
she tapped into that. CJ Tudor tapped into this like so deeply with all of these characters. And I think it's part of the reason it works so well. It's why, like, Alien and like some of these other horror movies that, and this is again borderline horror. And that's what we care about, is the humanity in the face of something horrifying.
These
So
like ungodly, awful circumstances.
yeah, and like being a whistler seems worse than death. So
Yeah, yeah, that's basically what it seems. Certainly, what it seems like, because you've
yeah,
really lost your humanity
yeah,
in a lot of ways. Although
yeah,
then they come and they gave him the lanyards, which like there is a very threatening moment there where
yeah,
they're all sort of standing outside the fence, and we know that the fence isn't electrified and it's broken, and they could just come in and overrun. So we've been led to like think of whistlers as these really horrible, like they are essentially zombies, and yet
yeah.
in that moment they
So
like put
human.
the lanyards and walk away, and it's like, oh, they totally could have overtaken him and
Yeah.
killed him and taken over the retreat, and they didn't.
Well, and
So
that's a
that was
twist in of itself, right?
I
It's
was
like
to
the
say, like, yeah,
assumptions.
talk about, yep,
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to point out one more moment and then maybe we should, well, two more things. Okay, so the first is that there's this moment where did it go? At 30% in Meg's POV on the cable car, there's this line of the logistics of really needing a shit. And it's
Oh,
like, it's this moment of respite on like this horrible situation that's like super scary, right? And we need that. This is like a pacing thing, right? It's like, because the end of that chapter, the power goes out. And so things get like way worse. But we have this moment where you're like, yeah, no, you got five people trapped in a cable car together. Like, how are you going to handle that?
yep,
Um, and
exactly,
it made me laugh. It was like, and I think that Meg even points it out in her POV. She's like, you don't think about like, when you're about to die, you're gonna have to deal with this. Sure
exactly.
do. And that's more humanity, right? It's injecting a respite, but it's also human. Um, and then these quotes that she put in throughout. So the first one I didn't write down, but the one about Oppenheimer, now we're all sons of bitches.
Oh yeah.
That opens right at 43%. And it's revealed at 72% that it's Oppenheimer. So if you knew Oppenheimer's quote, you would recognize it for what it is. I didn't. I've watched the movie and I've started reading the book, but I didn't realize that that was from him. So, whatever. Some of you will have already cited that, but it just makes so much sense, especially in that context, because Oppenheimer had to make these horrible decisions as well, right?
Yeah, it's very fitting for all the decisions that these characters have to make
Yeah.
over and over and over again, as the
Yeah.
stakes are continually raised, and they constantly have to decide like who's going to live and who's going to die, and how are we going to handle this,
Yep.
because it's it's always those kinds of choices, right? It's
Yeah.
never a choice of like, let's get to safety or let's kill someone. It's always like, well, safety means that like this person has to be sacrificed. So
Yeah.
is that okay? Or like, are we going to do sacrifice over here for this so that we're like live to breathe for another
Yeah.
hour?
It's like just a series of like second bad choices, to quote Storygrid. Like it's just genius.
I
Yeah.
also I want to call out though again like that thing that you made with point one, and I think that that's very true, like about having to take a shed and like those moments with Dexter, as well as she manages like the constant ratcheting up of the stakes in
Yeah.
this, like, as you and I have both said, like every chapter in each of these people's POVs, they're faced with these awful decisions, and they just
Awful.
keep going from bad to worse in terms of the decisions that you have to make. But you have to have those moments in there for your readers to be able to breathe.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like you run the risk of someone putting down the book not because they're like bored or anything, but because they're exhausted, right? So
Yes.
we
So
need
well
those
said.
moments where you can like let someone just kind of take a deep breath. And I think people feel like, especially in like a thriller kind of thing, like it always has to be every single moment. And you and I have talked about those books that we've read that had like twists, just like one after the other.
Right. It gets,
Those
yeah.
books also had moments to breathe in them.
Hmm.
And so don't feel like if you're putting in a moment of what feels like pause or it feels slow, you're that's not necessarily a bad thing. You need those as well.
Yeah.
So
Sure do. Very well said. Yeah. Um, yeah, there was another quote at the very end, right before we enter into Carter's chapters, where it's like one Carter, two Carter.
oh yeah.
The devil was an angel once, and that's at 90%. And I think I read that to be like Carter has been turned into a devil, right? And he was an angel once. He was willing to sacrifice everything to save his sister, and he has been sacrificing everything to save his niece.
Mhm.
but now he's, he had to make some horrible decisions along the way. And it could also refer to Dr. Grant, like, the dad.
Oh yeah.
And it just like, or any of these people, like anyone who
That's
had to
what I
make
think.
these decisions.
It's what like this situation and this world that they're living in, it's what it turns everybody into, right?
Yeah.
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 The
Uh,
first one, I didn't realize these were quotes, so thank you for cueing me in there.
I
Because the
mean,
Oppenheimer one, like yes, that I saw.
I know the Oppenheimer one is. I'm not sure about the other two. It wouldn't shock me if they were, but
Earth is full of dead good guys, and they say that multiple times too, right?
yeah.
Or at least in Carter's POV, I'm pretty sure it comes up, but it may come up. I wonder if Sean says it. I wish I had noticed that. Now that I'm paying attention, like
Yeah, because that would be another like really subtle clue that they're the same person.
yeah. But
Yeah.
it is definitely something that characters bring up more than once along the way. That like the
Yeah.
Earth is like all these people who are making like what seems to be the most moral decision or the kindest decision, they all end up dead.
Yep.
So
Yep. What does that say?
the
Yeah, totally.
survivors
Oh
are the
God.
ones who are making like these really awful but necessary decisions to stay alive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I
Um,
remember reading part of it that at one point and being like, God, I would be so dead in this world.
I feel
And
like
I'm not trying to
I'm not
hold
doing
myself
this.
up as like me, I'm this amazing, like wonderful moral person. I just like wouldn't probably have the stones. I would run away.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to see or talk to CJ Tudor at some point about how she plotted this. And, because again, we've had some other conversations where we're like, it's deceptively simple. Like the story seems simple, and then you unpack it a little bit and you're like, oh my God, like the plotting that had to go in with like all these different things. And I think the mini thriller, like this timeline thing can, somebody else is going to have to come up with something else, because this has been done now and it worked really well for this book, but trying to copy it would be very difficult, right? But like the mini thriller concept and having those be their own discrete chunks of story, but that's fine. But then having it all tie together is just like master level plotting. And just it just thank you so much, CJ Tudor, for writing this book. I loved it. I was so impressed. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the moment when you really start to realize what is happening again, was just like that was like the moment where you want to throw the book across the room, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Like you're
Yeah.
so like, damn, I did not see that coming.
Totally. And it's all it's such deliberate decision making on behalf of the author, right? To like put this stuff where it comes out. Like this was not an accident. And we always say the thing at the end of these, like this did not come out in the way that in its final product. Like this took many revisions, many set of eyeballs. Like this is what, it looks like when you have mastered your craft. And you're able to write a very complex book and nail it, but this probably went through 15 iterations before it got to this point.
Sam, what we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to do a deep dive adjacent series where we talk to all of these
I
authors and say,
know.
tell us your secrets. How did you do it? Because yes, as like to your like, what you were saying earlier about like you could have maybe written it all from Daniel Sean Carter's point of view. Like I
Yeah.
want to know, did she ever think about doing that? Did she try that
Yeah.
and then realize that like it just wasn't working, or like just the whole process behind all of this? I think would be
It
fascinating.
is
But
fascinating. I
excellent
want to
point,
know.
excellent reminder that like this did not spring fully formed from her
Yeah.
head.
Yeah, it did not. And yeah, just thank you, CJ Tudor, for writing this fantastic book. We appreciate you. So I think that's it for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. Kerry and I love nerding out about this stuff. We're big fans of the genre, and it's just an absolute delight to unpack and see what makes these fillers tick, and how the author achieved what they did. And just a shout out to Shadows and Secrets Retreats. We're going to be making this an annual thing. So even if you can't come this year, please do keep on our email list. We do monthly craft talks that we announce to our email list, and also these deep dives. We're going to keep doing them just for fun, for the love of the genre and lifting
You
up
tell we
authors.
like talking about this stuff.
Yeah,
We always have
yeah.
a lot of fun.
We're
So
just we're just two mega fans who love this stuff, and nerding out on what makes fillers work is our most favorite activity. So thank you so much for watching. And if you're interested, shadowsandsecretsretreats.com.
he nailed it.
We don't always.
That's me, I think. But Yeah. Shadowsandsecretsretreats.com. Look, I did it. Hooray.
Did it. All right, everyone. See you next
Thanks,
time.
everybody. Bye.
Bye.